Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Today's warehouse needs to keep inventory moving smoothly and quickly. Meet these challenges with on-demand warehouse labeling from Brother Mobile Solutions. Our mobile and industrial printers will help optimize your operations to achieve the speed, reliability, and durability your warehouse needs. With easy integration for existing warehouse technology, convenient portability, and upfront affordability, Brother Mobile Solutions is at your side when it comes to warehouse labeling. Try one for free today by visiting brothermobilesolutions.com/new warehouse or click the link in the show notes. That's brothermobilesolutions.com/new warehouse to try one for free today.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by previous guest, Mark Wheeler, who is the Director of Supply Chain Solutions at Zebra Technologies. And as we like to do, we're going to check in with Mark and learn about the new warehouse vision study for this year coming from Zebra Technologies, which dives into all different aspects of the warehouse and what's really kind of the big trends and what people are doing in the space and looking for in the next year to come. So Mark's going to talk to us about some of the findings there and what's really kind of going on in the industry and the market and what's being discovered through this vision study. So Mark, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm great, Kevin. It's great to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Definitely. Always great to get you on and talk about this vision study here. But for those that are not familiar, just give us a little brief overview of Zebra Technologies first.
Sure. Zebra Technologies, we connect the physical to the digital end-to-end in the supply chain. So from raw materials mining to point-of-sale retail, chances are very good that you'll see a Zebra device, Zebra scanner, RFID, machine vision, now robotics there at the mobile edge, and or either number one or strong number two in most of the categories that we participate in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Zebra, and I said this on the show multiple times, but Zebra is pretty ubiquitous, not only just in the supply chain world, but in the world in general. You see them kind of all over the place, your devices and different things throughout, retail environments too, and all over the place. So definitely very much have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And through that, you're able to do this warehouse vision study every year. So tell us a little bit about what is the warehouse vision study, what's involved in that, and how does that kind of get executed?
Yeah, so we've been doing this for a number of years now, and it has become an annual study, mostly due to the dynamic nature of the warehouse market that we've seen over the last 5 years. Yeah. And it's really been nice because we've had the opportunity to and sometimes ask the same questions and get trends, and in other cases to kind of adjust the questions as the market and technology change. But essentially, it's a significant effort. We go out and interview, in this case, somewhere around 1,400 respondents, and we're able to go. It's a global study. It's across industry. We make certain that we're hitting both operations and the IT side of the house. And more recently, we've begun including warehouse associates as well as decision makers in some of the key questions. So we get their perspective, and you can see where those align and where they don't.
Yeah, I think it's really great, and it's really interesting too. I think it was last year you guys also talked to the associates on the floor too, as well, included in there, and it's really a great kind of well-rounded perspective of really understanding what's going on in the industry from multiple different sides and aspects, and really get a kind of an idea of what's kind of going on. So with that being said, I mean, for this year's Warehouse Vision study, I mean, what's one thing that really stuck out to you the most in this year's study that kind of you think was kind of the biggest surprise, or maybe the most impactful finding that you felt personally?
Yeah, I think, we're in a really interesting time with regard to the warehouse market, with kind of a little bit of a pause in the rapid growth that we saw in the previous years, associated to some degree with the pandemic, but even predating that to some extent. So we're seeing kind of a slowdown. We've seen some big players announce that they're going to, sort of scale back their expansion plans. And at the same time, we see, aggressive moves into new technologies. So, the underlying trends of e-commerce growth that have driven a lot of innovation and a lot of investment, that continues even while it regresses to the norm of e-commerce growth pre-pandemic in a way. And so we see a lot of interest in, for example, RFID. And that is, there are a lot of contributing factors to that, but that's probably, one of the bigger standouts. At the network level, a lot of interest in supply chain visibility and incorporating things like over-the-road visibility and yard management visibility into operations to just, let things operate more quickly and more smoothly based on that improved visibility in operations. And within the four walls, a recognition that inventory accuracy is really foundational to a lot of things that need to be done.
Right.
And many, many companies now are looking at RFID as a way to get to that next level of performance.
Interesting stuff. And I'm interested to hear a little bit more about, you said the expansion has kind of slowed down a little bit. And I know certainly kind of heard in the headlines too that, Amazon kind of slowed their expansion and are pivoting a little bit to more of a micro fulfillment model in a sense. But I see also in the findings there that, there was a slowdown in warehouse expansion and warehouse facilities being taken on, but there's an expectation that over the next 5 years that it will expand more. So I'm curious, why do you think there was kind of a slowdown, but now there's also an expectation that it's going to increase over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think, the foundation of it all is the ongoing growth of e-commerce. And that continues. It may not be, what it was a couple of years ago. Like I said, it's kind of regressing to the norm. So we'll see kind of mid-single digit, ongoing e-commerce growth. And that drives an ongoing restructuring of the way products are, get to the end user. And that generally requires a different approach to the distribution network.
Yeah.
Where are my facilities? How big should they be? What's their operating profile? What's my inventory management strategy to meet that service requirement as that service requirement evolves? And then within the four walls, kind of the same thing. Okay, now I have this new operating profile. I have this new set of facilities, and I have all this new technology to choose from. What's the optimum way for me to automate, to leverage sensors, to leverage mobility, to optimize labor to meet those requirements? So that is kind of the picture in the background that is ongoing. And, I think, companies recognize that reality is not going to change, and you need to continue to invest and prepare and figure out how you're going to operate in that new world. It's just that right now, what we saw, I think, in the pandemic was in some cases sort of a furious drive for capacity and, to establish, to take advantage of the market growth and capture share. And now it's twofold. Now, maybe I have too much capacity in certain cases, so I got to wait for that to be consumed. And then secondly, you tend to, in this kind of situation, you shift your focus from building out throughput and capacity to optimizing for cost and service. So we're in 2 years ago, I was focused on how do I ship, 50% more lines in 12 months. Yeah. Now it's more, okay, I've got the capacity I need. How do I dial that in? How do I get incrementally better at all the things I need to get better at to run a profitable and successful operation?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, in a sense, almost like a pivot year, I guess maybe you could call it, where, companies, like you said, are just trying to grab that market share and, we need space, so grab the space, let's get the space. And now it's kind of like a strategization of, where are the right locations for us to have, what's the right size, and all those different things. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And, certainly seeing a lot of creative ways, I think, out there too, that people are going about utilizing space and looking at how are they going to have that distribution network laid out and things of that nature. So really interesting there. And you talked a little bit about some of the RFID and visibility, which I think is all kind of the path to some warehouse modernization. And I saw from some of the takeaways of the vision study that, there's a lot of mention of warehouse modernization in there. So I guess from Zebra's perspective, your perspective, I mean, what really falls into that category and what should be considered, if I'm an operator and, I'm looking at technology, I mean, what's really falling into that bucket of warehouse modernization? Where does that really start for a company?
Yeah, I think it starts with, looking at your SLAs, and which kind of lays out the, what you have to accomplish on a day in and day out basis. And once you've got those well understood, what's the optimum way of how you're going to do that? Mm-hmm. And one of the key questions there, continues to be labor optimization. So from a warehouse operations improvement standpoint, that was, the number one priority, prioritizing labor optimization. So how do you do that? And you can do that through mobility, giving them the right tools for the right job, making sure that they're as effective as they can be. And as we've talked about many times, that translates into wearable technology of one form or another, depending on the task and the job. You do that by mechanizing those things that make sense to mechanize. And when we think about that in the terms of labor, a lot of times what that translates into is the non-value add activities that robots are good at, moving material from point A to point B, and doing that in an intelligent way. And you do that with sensors. So you do that with sensors that can, give you operational visibility, that can error-proof tasks and activities, and improve your inventory accuracy, improve your task accuracy without putting more demands on labor. And when you do all those things, what you find is that your labor is more highly leveraged, and it's actually more important than ever to make sure that you've got the right people doing the right things and that you've given them the right tools to do it, because you're going to get more leverage out of that investment than you ever did before.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And certainly we're seeing where a lot of those, like you said, those kind of non-value added tasks are being automated and coming more and more, I think, realization, even for now, the small to medium sized players to be able to enter into that and have more accessibility to do those types of things and bring those things to the table in order to keep up and also compete as well. So you talked about kind of the labor empowerment and ease of making, employees' jobs a little easier in there. So I remember from the last vision study, that was one of the big kind of surprising takeaways a little bit, was that, the employees themselves were saying that they were more interested or more likely to stay with a company that was investing in technology to help their kind of work environment a little easier to do or more productive there. So are you seeing the same thing still as being something in this study that's top of mind and important?
Yeah, we do. So the last time we found that both the decision makers and the associates believed that having the right tools was going to, make the job more attractive, and so it's going to improve recruiting and retention. But last time we saw kind of a gap there where the associates were actually more enthusiastic about that than decision makers. And I think this time what we see is there's good alignment there, that they both have that perspective at this point. And so whether it's mechanizing out a lot of travel or leveraging the right mobility tools, maybe better ergonomics, just making it flow better, anything that's going to reduce the effort, make the IT solutions that they use, more intuitive, easier to learn and use, more similar to their personal experiences with mobile technology, for example, then that's going to improve employee satisfaction and retention.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really, really great thing. And especially when companies are trying to be aware of that and conscious of that, and really starting to understand and investing in those things to make the employees have a better experience, and also enjoy the work a little more, as much as possible, and, really helping to increase that productivity overall, especially as, we see it more and more challenging to get people to want to come and work in a warehouse environment and things like that. So really interesting stuff there, and glad to see that that's still continuing to be something that's top of mind for these companies as well. So you talked about visibility in there too, which I think has always been kind of a challenge in a sense in the warehouse, especially when you're looking at multiple different silos, almost in a sense. Where you mentioned the yard visibility, and then oftentimes you had a separate YMS and then a WMS and then separate TMS and all these different things happening, where it's been difficult at times, or depending on systems, to be able to integrate those and have full visibility, I think, across the supply chain. So tell us a little bit about how, Zebra kind of is looking at this visibility challenge, and how you're being able to address some of these issues and giving further visibility into the supply chain as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's something that we see all the time now. We do our customer briefings and where we'll spend a full day with a particular customer and just talk through what their priorities are and what they're doing. And of course, we'll talk a lot about how Zebra can help them close those gaps. And we see a lot of focus on this idea of visibility. And part of that is the tools. We have a ventures investment, for example, in FourKites that provides the over-the-road visibility. Yeah. But you see, I think part of the motivation for moving to cloud-based systems is better, cross-functional integration between over-the-road, yard management, dock management, inbound. What I like to think of it as what we used to talk about with manufacturing, and we talked about lower, when the perspective changed on work in process inventory to be more of a liability than an asset, and lowering WIP would expose rocks, which were poor practices out on the shop floor that were sort of hidden by this excess inventory. And a similar kind of dynamic is happening, I think, in supply chain execution, where what we're lowering is not inventory necessarily; it's time. We're requiring operations to operate quicker and quicker, and that puts pressure on the entire operation. It's not just about the fulfillment window, right? It's not just about my outbound throughput. It's the entire operation end to end has to be better, has to be faster, has to be more precise, more accurate, because any error, whether it's receiving or put away or what have you, is disruptive to the process more so than it's been in the past. And so we see that, and we see a recognition of that, and we see a recognition that operational visibility is kind of foundational to that. Just like inventory accuracy is foundational to a well-operating warehouse, supply chain visibility is foundational to a well-operating supply chain. And there's a very strong appreciation for that. And that requires, as you noted, cross-functional integration. And so, that requires the, good, accurate data from the edge that you can count on and take action on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's so many times, even in, my career, where I've seen where it's just like one part of the supply chain, there's no visibility for the other part of the supply chain. And it's just like, it makes it hard to coordinate, and, things could get done a lot faster, more efficient if there was that visibility. So, I mean, are you seeing that? And, because certainly I've been hearing a lot of people talking about visibility and that being a pain point for them. I mean, are you seeing from the vision study that that's potentially one of the biggest pain points for operators in the industry now?
Yeah, absolutely. You see that, from a warehouse perspective, right behind labor optimization, we see, the move to cloud-based systems, investing in visibility across the supply chain. We see investing in supplier management. That is so important that you're able to have if you want to have a quick and accurate dock to stock time, you better be working with your suppliers before it ever hits your dock. And, those are priority projects, based on the survey.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's such a big thing, and I think once you have that visibility throughout, it's just going to increase that efficiency overall. There's not going to be questions on when things are showing up, and where is this trailer with product that we need for these orders, in the yard. All those different things, when you start to mesh those together and really have that full visibility, I think it answers a lot of questions, and probably, I would imagine, cuts down a lot of back and forth in emails too, between different departments trying to figure out what's going on and how to coordinate those things. So, really, really important to have that full visibility, I think, and makes a ton of sense. And now another thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of going in the same vein of going throughout the entire supply chain from the RFID perspective on products. I'm seeing now as well where RFID is being utilized in retail outlets, where you go and you just kind of dump whatever you have, whether it's clothing or something, in an area, and it's just automatically sensing, what is that item, and ringing it up, and, that's through RFID. So, I mean, how are you seeing, and RFID has been around for a very long time, but there's been more adoption of it. So, I mean, how are you seeing that RFID is coming into play, and how are companies thinking about how those sensors can, kind of carry through the whole product life cycle?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of factors driving that, but we see RFID and passive UHF RFID specifically as the top investment priorities when we start talking about sensors in the supply chain, and that's validated with our customer interactions and our trade show conversations and everything. RFID is top of mind for many operations, and it starts at retail, as you pointed out. It starts in the retail store. Mm-hmm. They were the initial, that was the initial business case for widespread use of item level tagging, was to drive better shelf accuracy and therefore drive higher top line sales. And that proved to be the case. And then we saw the whole phenomenon of ship from store come into play. And that drove a whole new set of value and an expansion of the technology to new categories. Because if you don't know what you have in near real time, how can you allocate it to online demand? So the whole idea of having better inventory accuracy is driving that. And now we have, additional value from RFID at the item level in the store to manage shrink and loss prevention. So that's a whole nother economic driver that's kind of top of mind right now in a lot of cases. And what we see, as we've talked about further back in the supply chain, whether it's in the manufacturing plant or in the warehouse or even back of store, the idea of leveraging RFID for all the reasons that we've talked about. We've got to operate faster, we've got to operate with greater precision, and we've got to do so without putting more burdens on the labor force. And so RFID is a natural technology to do that. And we see widespread interest in that, and that's reflected in the survey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes a ton of sense. And obviously you mentioned the inventory accuracy in here a couple times. And I think we spoke about this on the podcast before, but such a integral part to your operation and just overall supply chain to being able to understand that. I mean, I know personally as a consumer too, I've gone through the frustration of, like a ship from store, pick up from store, and store says they have X number in stock, and you go to the store and they don't have any in stock, or they can't find it, right? It's not a great experience for the consumer. So I'm curious in that sense too. I mean, in the vision study, I mean, are people becoming more and more, I guess, concerned or focused on their inventory accuracy and how to improve that?
Yeah, it's really quite striking when we ask within the context of e-commerce, what are the biggest challenges, the biggest operational challenges due to the increase in e-commerce activity?
Yeah.
The number one challenge identified is inventory accuracy and visibility. So even it's ranked just slightly ahead of faster delivery to the end customer. Oh, wow. So we all know that speed in e-commerce is critical. And so we have shorter lead times, and we know that managing transportation costs is critical because that can often be the difference between profitable and unprofitable e-commerce fulfillment. And yet we see inventory accuracy and visibility as the number one priority there. And I think that speaks to that.
Very interesting, and it's very interesting to hear that it's above the speed of delivery. I mean, by a little bit, but still, and I think that's pretty interesting because if you look at e-commerce, it's challenging certainly to keep that inventory accuracy up. There's a lot of touch points. The product is moving very, very quickly in a lot of cases. And, it's a lot of each pick too, which can be challenging to get accurate counts. And depending on those types of things, there's a lot of fast paced environment. And I think on the backside of that, from the consumer perspective, just like I said, my example there was store was supposed to have X number. If you also go online and, it says it's in stock, you order it, and then you get a message that says your order has been canceled because it's out of stock or it's gone on back order or something like that. It's a pretty negative experience, I think, for the consumer. You get their hopes up essentially. So, it's good to hear that it's a good focus. And I'm curious from your perspective, how do you see companies, or how do you think companies should be addressing some of those inventory accuracy concerns, and what should they be putting in place to improve upon that?
Well, you as an operator that inventory accuracy is a daily battle. There are a lot of different things that can contribute to an inventory problem. So first of all, cycle counting is critical because that's sort of like taking the pulse of the operation. You want to find those errors and those problems before they impact your customer, basically. And so RFID is certainly a way to do that, to keep better inventory control without labor. You can put an RFID reader in the ceiling or on a lift truck or an autonomous mobile robot or in the hands of an operator. And just like they do in the stores, you can keep control of your inventory. So that's one of the drivers of RFID is to do exactly that. But it's a daily battle, and the key is to make that investment in inventory control and then understand the root causes and resolve them. And one of the things that makes the highly mechanized solutions attractive to some, where basically you just singulate the inventory and put it all into a big ASRS, is that a lot of the opportunities for inventory problems may be mitigated at that point.
Yeah.
And makes things a little bit easier. But the technology, I think, is going to, the edge technology, the sensor-based technology. So that's RFID, but it's also machine vision and RTLS, and we have other technologies that we can use to go beyond the barcode scan, basically to understand exactly what's happening in the physical world in real time.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there for people to be able to take advantage of some of those technologies and really make a big improvement on that inventory accuracy. And like you said, such an integral part to the operation and just the business as a whole. It's great to see that people are having that as top of mind and are focused on trying to solve that issue. I think it's certainly a challenging issue, as you said, a daily challenge, certainly, something very, very small that takes like 10 seconds to make a mistake on could cause you hours of trying to resolve those inventory issues and figure out where product got misplaced to or something of that nature. So really interesting stuff here from you and the vision study. I'm curious as we kind of close out here, if you take the findings from this vision study and you kind of put it all together in your mind and you look at, what direction is the warehousing industry going in the next 2 to 3 years? What would you say is really kind of the direction that we're heading?
Yeah, I think the transformation of the supply chain continues, maybe not at the pace it was a couple of years ago, but as we said, it continues. And delivering on that profitably is going to require operators to leverage these new technologies in a way that makes sense for them. So whether that's physical automation or sensors or, investing in mobility, there's going to be different answers for different operators depending on their specific situation, how much flexibility they require, how much certainty they have about what their future looks like. Lots of different things come into play there. But the pace, I would say, of aggressive investment, not just in edge technology, but in the software that's going to leverage that edge technology, is continuing and accelerating. And so I would encourage our audience to be aggressive about learning about these new technologies, what they can do, piloting, and figuring out the best mix for their particular situation.
All right, great advice, and definitely looking forward to seeing what the continued evolution of our industry is. And I'm certainly sure that we will check in with you again, Mark, to see what the pulse of the industry is. Always definitely enjoy talking to you about this warehouse vision study, and I think it's a great thing that Zebra is putting together and putting out there for the industry to digest and kind of see what's going on and how to address some of those challenges and issues they may be having. So I want to thank you for sharing your insights today on the show. If people are interested in learning more about Zebra Technologies and want to check out the warehouse vision study, where's the best place to do that?
Well, you can find that at zebra.com, and we have kind of scratched the surface here. So there will be, a lot of gems in there that I think you'd be interested in reading about.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information and a link to the Warehouse Vision Study at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So, Mark, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.